Breaking news now at 6. Just moments ago, a federal judge has ruled on one of former President Trump's appeals to dismiss criminal charges linked to his classified documents case.
Now, Trump and his lawyers today were in federal court in Fort Pierce. They argued that the case should be dropped. CBS's Miami's Joan Murray joins us live outside of the federal courthouse in Fort Pierce with what we have just learned. Joan.
Well, there were two motions today, and a judge that former President Donald Trump appointed to the federal bench has ruled on one of them, and she has denied the motion on that the case should be thrown out because of unconstitutional vagueness. Former President Donald Trump was escorted into the federal courthouse for a hearing in his classified documents case.
I have the 2020-21, and now this is the 2024.
Connie Trask never misses a chance to show her support.
All right, this is huge. A judge just denied Donald Trump's motion to dismiss a major criminal case, and that means we're officially on track for a criminal trial. Like, this is really happening. Trump's legal team has been throwing everything at the wall, trying to get this case dismissed, trying to delay it, trying to derail the prosecution entirely. And the judge just looked at all those arguments and said, no, this case is moving forward. You're going to trial. We're talking about felony charges connected to hush money payments and business record falsification. We're talking about crimes that prosecutors say Trump committed, and now a judge has ruled that Trump doesn't get to just wave a magic wand and make those charges disappear. He's going to have to face a jury. He's going to have to sit in a courtroom and defend himself against criminal allegations, and that's unprecedented for someone serving as president. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
It's an argument resonating with supporters like Patty Link, who drove from Deerfield Beach in Broward.
My father fought in World War II under General Patton, and this is what it's come to.
But prosecutors said the documents in question aren't personal but presidential, dealing with top secret information.
And I don't know when he finds time to sleep, so the least we can do is come out and wave some flags in support.
Stephen Brown, one of a handful of dissenters in the crowd, said he hopes the criminal case goes forward.
My point of view is he broke the law, and he should be held accountable like anybody else.
So let's break down what just happened. New York Judge Juan Merchan rejected Trump's latest efforts to throw out these felony charges. Trump's legal team argued that the alleged conduct falls within the scope of protected presidential actions, that he should have immunity, that there are procedural technicalities that should derail the case. And Judge Merchan went through all of those arguments and systematically rejected every single one. The judge made it crystal clear that neither presidential immunity nor procedural technicalities will shield Trump from facing a jury. The decision states, and this is a direct quote, "The court would still find that the people's use of these acts as evidence of the decidedly personal acts of falsifying business records poses no danger of intrusion on the authority and function of the executive branch." Let me translate that for you. The judge is saying these weren't official presidential acts. These were personal criminal acts, and therefore presidential immunity doesn't apply. You don't get protection for personal crimes just because you happen to be president. And here's what makes this so significant. Both sides are now ordered to prepare for an imminent trial date. The judge has set a trial for March 25th. That's not some distant date that might get pushed back indefinitely. That's coming up fast. That means prosecutors are preparing to introduce extensive documentation and witness testimony. That means Trump's legal team has to actually prepare a defense rather than just filing endless motions to dismiss and delay. That means we're moving from the preliminary legal maneuvering phase to the actual trial phase. And for Trump, that's a nightmare scenario, because once you're in trial, once a jury is seated and hearing evidence, you can't just make the case go away with legal arguments. You have to actually defend yourself against the charges. Prosecutors are hailing this ruling as a critical step for accountability. They've been saying all along that Trump committed crimes and should face the same justice system as everyone else. And now a judge has agreed that the case should proceed to trial. That's a huge validation of the prosecution's position. Meanwhile, Trump's attorneys are denouncing the ruling as politically motivated and have announced plans for immediate appeals. Of course they have. That's been the playbook all along. Lose in court, claim it's political persecution, file an appeal, try to delay everything as long as possible. But here's the problem with that strategy. The appeals keep failing. Trump's options for avoiding criminal trials are rapidly dwindling, because as similar motions to dismiss have been rejected across several ongoing prosecutions, it's becoming clear that courts aren't buying Trump's legal arguments. Judges across multiple jurisdictions are saying no, you have to face trial. Immunity doesn't protect you from prosecution for personal criminal acts. And the specific charges here are really important to understand. We're talking about hush money payments made during the 2016 election to keep women from going public with allegations about Trump. And we're talking about how those payments were documented in Trump's business records. The allegation is that Trump and his organization falsified business records to cover up these payments to make them look like legitimate legal expenses when they were actually hush money payments designed to influence the election. That's a crime in New York. It's business record falsification. And if prosecutors can prove Trump knowingly falsified those records with intent to cover up another crime, that's a felony. Multiple felonies, actually, one for each falsified record. Now, Trump has argued that these payments were made while he was president or related to his presidential campaign, so they should be protected. But the judge has rejected that argument. The ruling makes clear that the alleged conduct falls outside the scope of protected presidential actions. Paying hush money to adult film actresses is not an official presidential duty. Falsifying business records to cover up those payments is not executive branch business. Those are personal acts, allegedly criminal personal acts, and they don't get immunity protection. The judge has also ordered Trump to appear in court. That's significant because Trump has been trying to avoid physically showing up for these proceedings. He's claimed he's too busy with presidential duties. He's argued that forcing him to appear in court is disruptive to the functioning of government. But the judge has said no, you're a defendant in a criminal case. You have to appear in court like any other defendant. That means we're going to see Trump sitting in a courtroom at the defense table facing criminal charges. The optics of that alone are going to be extraordinary. So buckle up, because we're going to break down exactly what this ruling means, why Trump's legal arguments failed, and what we can expect as this case moves toward trial. This is a historic moment. We're about to see a sitting president on trial for criminal charges. And based on this judge's ruling, there's no way out. The trial is happening. The date is set. And Trump is going to have to face a jury of his peers and defend himself against felony allegations. This story is about to get very intense, very quickly. All right, so let's dig into the details of this ruling, because understanding why the judge denied Trump's motion to dismiss really shows you how weak his legal position is. Trump's legal team has been arguing that he should get immunity from prosecution for several reasons. First, they've claimed presidential immunity, the idea that a sitting president can't be prosecuted for acts committed while in office. Second, they've argued that even if he can be prosecuted, the specific acts he's charged with are related to his official duties and therefore protected. Third, they've raised various procedural arguments about statute of limitations, jurisdiction, and whether the charges were properly brought. And Judge Merchan went through each of these arguments and systematically demolished them. Let's start with the presidential immunity argument. Trump's team has been claiming that as a sitting president, he has broad immunity from criminal prosecution. They've cited past Justice Department opinions saying that sitting presidents can't be indicted. But here's the problem with that argument in this case. First, some of the alleged conduct occurred before Trump was president, during his campaign. Presidential immunity doesn't cover acts committed before you take office. Second, even for acts that occurred while he was president, there's a distinction between official acts and personal acts. Presidential immunity is meant to protect presidents from being prosecuted for their official duties, for decisions they make as part of governing the country. It's not meant to protect them from prosecution for personal crimes that have nothing to do with their presidential responsibilities. And that's exactly what Judge Merchan ruled. The judge found that the alleged conduct, paying hush money, and falsifying business records to cover it up, those are decidedly personal acts. They're not part of the president's official duties. They're not executive branch business. They're personal conduct that allegedly violated criminal law. And personal conduct doesn't get immunity protection just because the person committing it happens to be president. The judge's language on this is really clear. The court finds that the people's use of these acts as evidence of the decidedly personal acts of falsifying business records poses no danger of intrusion on the authority and function of the executive branch. That's a direct rejection of Trump's immunity argument. The judge is saying prosecuting you for these personal crimes doesn't interfere with the presidency, so immunity doesn't apply. Now let's talk about the specific charges and why they matter. Trump is facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Here's how those charges work. In 2016, Trump's then lawyer Michael Cohen paid $130,000 to adult film actress Stormy Daniels to keep her from going public with allegations about an affair with Trump. Cohen also made similar payments to others. Then Trump's organization reimbursed Cohen for those payments, but they documented the reimbursements as legal fees. They created invoices, checks, and ledger entries that made it look like Cohen was being paid for legal services when he was actually being reimbursed for hush money payments. That's business record falsification. In New York, falsifying business records is a misdemeanor, but if you falsify records with intent to commit or conceal another crime, it becomes a felony. The prosecution is arguing that Trump falsified these records with intent to violate campaign finance laws and tax laws. The hush money payments were essentially illegal campaign contributions because they were made to influence the election, and the way they were documented may have violated tax laws as well. So each false entry in the business records, each invoice, each check, each ledger entry, that's a separate count of felony falsification, 34 of them total. And if a jury convicts on even some of those counts, Trump would be a convicted felon. That's what's at stake here. That's why Trump's legal team has been fighting so hard to get the case dismissed, because if it goes to trial, if a jury hears the evidence, there's a real possibility of conviction. Trump's team has also argued about timing and jurisdiction. They've claimed that some of the conduct occurred too long ago and is barred by statute of limitations. They've argued that New York doesn't have proper jurisdiction over some of the charges, but Judge Merchan has rejected those arguments too. The judge found that the prosecution was brought within the applicable statute of limitations, and the judge found that since Trump's business is based in New York, since the falsified records were created and maintained in New York has proper jurisdiction to prosecute these crimes. Another argument Trump's team made was about the legal theory underlying the charges. They argued that elevating business record falsification from a misdemeanor to a felony based on intent to commit campaign finance violations is legally questionable. They claimed this is an unprecedented use of the law, but the judge disagreed. The judge found that New York law clearly allows business record falsification to be charged as a felony when done with intent to commit or conceal another crime, and there's sufficient evidence that Trump's intent was to conceal violations of campaign finance and tax laws. So the legal theory is sound and the case can proceed. Now, what does this mean practically going forward? Well, the judge has set a trial date for March 25th. That's the date when jury selection will begin. From that point, the trial could last several weeks or even months depending on how much evidence is presented and how long deliberations take. Prosecutors have indicated they plan to introduce extensive documentation. We're talking about business records, financial statements, communications between Trump and his associates, all the paper trail showing how these payments were made and how they were documented. Prosecutors also plan to call numerous witnesses. Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer who made the payments, he's going to be a key witness. He's already pled guilty to related charges and has said he made the payments at Trump's direction. Stormy Daniels herself might testify about the circumstances of the payment. Trump Organization employees who helped create the false records might testify. Financial experts might testify about campaign finance and tax law violations. It's going to be a comprehensive presentation of evidence designed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Trump knowingly falsified business records with criminal intent. Trump's defense team will of course present their own case. They'll try to create reasonable doubt. They might argue that Trump didn't personally know the records were being falsified, that his employees handled the paperwork without his knowledge. They might argue that the payments were legitimate legal fees, not hush money reimbursements. They might challenge the credibility of witnesses like Michael Cohen, who has admitted to lying in the past. But here's the problem for the defense. There's a paper trail. There are documents, checks signed by Trump, invoices, ledger entries. It's going to be hard to argue Trump didn't know what was happening when his signature is on the checks. The political implications of this trial are enormous. Trump is serving as president while facing criminal charges. The trial is scheduled for March, which puts it right in the middle of his term. Every day of the trial is going to dominate news coverage. Every witness who testifies, every piece of evidence introduced, every development is going to be front page news. Trump's approval ratings, his ability to govern, his political standing, all of it is going to be affected by this trial. And if he's convicted, that creates a whole new set of questions. What happens if a sitting president is convicted of felonies? Does he have to resign? Can he continue governing while appealing? Does Congress move to impeach based on the conviction? We're in uncharted territory here. The judge's ruling also has implications for Trump's other legal cases. He's facing criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions. In every case, he's been arguing immunity, claiming that he can't be prosecuted for acts related to his presidency, but judges keep rejecting those arguments. The precedent being set is clear. Presidential immunity doesn't protect you from prosecution for personal criminal acts, and that's going to make it very hard for Trump to avoid trials in his other cases as well. Trump's legal team has announced they'll appeal this ruling. They're going to ask higher courts to review Judge Merchan's decision and potentially overturn it or at least delay the trial, but appeals take time, and in the meantime, trial preparation continues. And based on how other appeals have gone, There's no reason to think higher courts are going to give Trump the relief he's seeking. Multiple appellate courts have already rejected similar immunity arguments in other Trump cases. The Supreme Court has declined to intervene to stop Trump's prosecutions. The legal momentum is all moving in one direction, toward trial. So what's the bottom line? Judge Merchan has denied Trump's motion to dismiss, clearing the path for trial. The trial is set for March 25th. Trump will have to appear in court and defend himself against 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Prosecutors are preparing to introduce extensive evidence and witness testimony. Trump's immunity arguments have been rejected. His procedural arguments have been rejected. His legal options for avoiding trial are basically exhausted. We're going to see a historic criminal trial of a sitting president, and it's going to happen very soon. Okay, let's break this down into the essential points because this ruling is a major development with huge implications. First and most important, Judge Merchan denied Trump's motion to dismiss the criminal case against him. That means the case is moving forward to trial. Trump's legal team argued for dismissal on multiple grounds: presidential immunity, procedural technicalities, jurisdictional issues, problems with the legal theory underlying the charges, and the judge rejected all of those arguments. The case stands, the charges stand, and Trump is going to have to face a jury. Second, the judge explicitly rejected Trump's presidential immunity defense. The ruling makes clear that the alleged conduct, paying hush money and falsifying business records to cover it up, those are personal acts, not official presidential duties. And personal acts don't get immunity protection. The judge stated that prosecuting Trump for these decidedly personal acts poses no danger of intrusion on the authority and function of the executive branch. That's a complete rejection of Trump's core legal defense. He's been arguing that as president, he has broad immunity from prosecution. The judge is saying no, not for personal crimes, you don't. Third, the trial date is set for March 25th. That's coming up fast. That means jury selection, opening statements, witness testimony, all of it is going to start happening in just a few months. Both sides are now ordered to prepare for trial. Prosecutors are getting their evidence and witnesses ready. Trump's defense team has to prepare their case. This isn't some vague future possibility anymore. This is a trial that's actually going to happen on a specific date. Fourth, Trump has been ordered to appear in court. He can't just skip the proceedings, claiming he's too busy with presidential duties. He has to physically be there in the courtroom like any other criminal defendant. That means we're going to see images of Trump sitting at the defense table, facing criminal charges, appearing before a jury. The optics of that are going to be extraordinary and politically significant. Now let's talk about the charges themselves, because understanding what Trump is accused of really matters. He's facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Here's the basic allegation. During the 2016 campaign, hush money payments were made to women to keep them from going public with allegations about Trump. Those payments were then reimbursed, but documented as legal fees in Trump's business records. That's allegedly false documentation. The payments weren't actually for legal fees, they were reimbursements for hush money, and falsifying business records with intent to conceal other crimes, in this case campaign finance and tax violations. That's a felony in New York. Each false record is a separate count, which is why there are 34 felonies charged. Why did Judge Merchan reject Trump's legal arguments? Well, let's go through them. On presidential immunity, the judge found that immunity doesn't protect personal criminal acts. It's meant to protect official presidential duties, not personal conduct. And paying hush money to cover up alleged affairs, that's not an official presidential duty. That's personal conduct. So immunity doesn't apply. On the procedural and jurisdictional arguments, the judge found that the charges were properly brought within the statute of limitations, that New York has proper jurisdiction, since Trump's business is based there and the records were created there, and that there are no procedural defects that would require dismissal. On the legal theory underlying the charges, the judge found that New York law clearly allows business record falsification to be elevated to a felony when done with intent to commit or conceal another crime, and there's sufficient evidence that Trump's intent was to conceal campaign finance and tax violations. So the legal theory is sound. What happens now? Well, both sides prepare for trial. Prosecutors are going to present their case, trying to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Trump knowingly falsified business records with criminal intent. They'll introduce documents, financial records, communications, all the paper trail. They'll call witnesses including Michael Cohen, who made the payments, possibly Stormy Daniels, who received the payment, Trump Organization employees who helped create the records, and financial experts who can explain campaign finance and tax law violations. Trump's defense team will try to create reasonable doubt. They might argue Trump didn't personally know records were being falsified. They might challenge witness credibility, especially Michael Cohen, who has admitted to lying in the past. They might argue the payments were legitimate legal fees. but they face an uphill battle because there's extensive documentation, including checks signed by Trump himself. The political implications are massive. A sitting president on trial for felony charges. That's unprecedented in American history. The trial is going to dominate news coverage for weeks or months. Every development, every witness, every piece of evidence is going to be analyzed endlessly. Trump's ability to govern is going to be affected because he'll have to spend time in court, because the media attention will be overwhelming, because political opponents will use the trial against him. And if he's convicted, that creates questions we've never had to answer before. Can a sitting president continue serving after being convicted of felonies? Would Congress move to impeach? What happens during appeals? We're in completely uncharted territory. This ruling also affects Trump's other legal cases. He's facing criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions, federal charges related to classified documents and January 6th, state charges in Georgia related to election interference. In every case, he's been arguing presidential immunity, but judges keep rejecting that argument. The precedent being set is that presidential immunity doesn't shield you from prosecution for personal criminal acts or acts unrelated to official duties. That makes it much harder for Trump to avoid trials in those other cases. His main legal defense strategy is being systematically dismantled by courts across the country. Trump's legal team has announced they'll appeal this ruling. They're going to ask appellate courts to review it and potentially overturn it or delay the trial. But appeals have been failing. Courts at multiple levels, including the Supreme Court, have declined to give Trump the relief he's seeking in various cases. The legal momentum is all in one direction, toward holding Trump accountable through the criminal justice system rather than giving him special protections because of his position. The judge's language in this ruling is also significant. By describing the alleged conduct as decidedly personal acts, the judge is making clear this isn't a close call. These aren't acts that could reasonably be seen as part of presidential duties. These are clearly personal actions that allegedly violated criminal law. That makes it very hard for appellate courts to overturn this ruling because the distinction between official and personal acts is so clear. What are the stakes for Trump personally? Well, if convicted on even some of these 34 felony counts, he becomes a convicted felon. He could face prison time, though that's complicated by his status as a sitting president. He could face fines and other penalties. His reputation is permanently damaged. His business could face consequences. And politically, being a convicted felon makes governing and maintaining support much more difficult. For the justice system, this case is a test of whether the principle that no one is above the law actually means anything. Can the criminal justice system hold a president accountable for alleged crimes? Or do presidents get special treatment that allows them to avoid consequences? Judge Merchan's ruling comes down firmly on the side of accountability. The judge is saying presidents are not above the law. They can be prosecuted for personal criminal acts, and they have to face the same justice system as everyone else. The timeline moving forward is tight. March 25th is less than 4 months away. That's not much time for trial preparation. Prosecutors have to finalize their witness list, make sure all their evidence is in order, prepare opening and closing statements. Trump's defense team has to do the same. Jury selection alone could take days or even weeks, given the high-profile nature of the case and the need to find impartial jurors. Then the trial itself could last weeks or months, depending on how much evidence is presented. So what's the bottom line? Judge Merchan denied Trump's motion to dismiss. The criminal case is moving forward to trial. Trump's presidential immunity defense has been rejected. His procedural and jurisdictional arguments have been rejected. The trial is set for March 25th. Trump must appear in court. He's facing 34 felony counts that could result in conviction and prison time. His options for avoiding trial are exhausted. We're about to witness a historic criminal trial of a sitting president. And based on this judge's ruling and the trend in other courts, there's no legal escape hatch that's going to save Trump from having to face a jury and defend himself against these charges. This is happening. The date is set, and the implications, both legal and political, are enormous. Stay tuned, because as this trial approaches and then unfolds, it's going to be one of the biggest stories in American history. A president on trial for felonies. That's where we are. And Judge Merchan's ruling makes clear that the trial is definitely going forward.